Cleetus McFarland is a YouTube car guy. He is not a professional NASCAR driver. He has no Cup Series championship. He has no big sponsor money behind him. He started this race dead last in 20th place. And yet, on Saturday, at Talladega Superspeedway, he led laps, nearly won the whole thing, and then said something on live television that made the entire three first. Let's set the scene first, because the context here matters a lot. Talladega Superspeedway is not a racetrack that forgives mistakes. It is 2.66 miles of high-banked asphalt where cars run inches apart at nearly 200 miles per hour, drafting off each other, pushing each other, hunting for position in a pack that could turn into a wreck in less than a second. Experienced Cup Series drivers with decades of superspeedway racing have crashed out of Talladega. Seasoned veterans have called it the most unpredictable racetrack in America, and Cleetus McFarland, whose real name is Garrett Mitchell, walked in there as a part-time racer who built his reputation making videos about cars on the internet. But here is the thing that most people do not know about this race before we get to that one-liner. Cleetus was not even supposed to be in the big race. NASCAR had not cleared him to compete in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Talladega. That is the more prestigious event at the track, the one with bigger names and higher stakes. NASCAR looked at his results and said no. So while other drivers were getting ready for that race, Cleetus was lining up for the ARCA Menards Series race instead. Here is where it gets interesting. Because of a weekend full of weather problems, the ARCA field was not lined up by qualifying times. Instead, they used owner points to set the grid. Cleetus McFarland, running a newer program without a mountain of accumulated points, got slotted into 20th place. Dead last, furthest back from the front he could possibly start. For most drivers, starting 20th as a super speedway with a field that size is a tough position. You spend the first chunk of the race just trying to get into the conversation at the front. You are not racing for the win from the drop of the green flag. You are racing to survive the early laps and find your way through traffic. Cleetus did not seem to get that memo. He sliced through the field. By lap 30, before the first caution even flew, he had worked his way from 20th up into the top. For context, the first caution came when Allie Owens crashed in the tri-oval. At that point, Cleetus was already a completely different story in that race than the one that started when the green flag dropped. And then it got better when the competition caution came out on lap 41, which is basically the halftime break of the race. Cleetus McFarland was sitting in second place, right on the bumper of race leader Gio Ruggiero. A guy who started last was now one car length away from the lead at halfway. Here is your first cliffhanger, because at that point, the real question was not whether Cleetus could survive Talladega. It was whether he could actually win it. Stay with me, because what happened next is the part that nobody saw coming. Coming out of that competition caution restart, Cleetus went door to door with Ruggiero, and he did not back down. He fought for the lead and took it, powered past by a push from Daniel Dye. And just like that, a YouTube car guy was leading the ARCA race at Talladega Superspeedway for the first time in his career. Think about that for a second. This is a man who came up making videos about burnouts, engine swaps, and drag racing in an open field. He was not groomed for this. He did not come through the traditional racing pipeline of karting as a kid, working up through local tracks, getting a development deal with a big team. He built his audience on the internet and then decided he wanted to race stock cars. And now, in the middle of one of the most famous racetrack tracks in the world, he was at the front. The crowd noticed immediately. Reports from Talladega said that when Cleetus took the lead, the reaction from the fans in the infield and around the track was so loud that people compared it to what it sounds like when Dale Earnhardt Jr. used to take the lead at a super speedway. That is not a small comparison. That is the biggest crowd reaction benchmark in modern NASCAR history. But remember, we said this was a cliffhanger, and Talladega does not let anyone hold the lead forever without a fight. Ruggiero came back. He took the lead again on the outside on the next restart. but Cleetus responded immediately and reclaimed the front spot as the crowd went loud again. Back and forth, trading the lead at one of the sport's most dangerous tracks. And then things got complicated. On one of the restarts, Cleetus got tangled up in the chess match at the front and turned Jake Bowman while battling for position. No caution came out, but the race was reshuffling. Cleetus fell back to fifth. Isabella Robusto moved into the lead, and then, as if Talladega needed to remind everyone who was really in charge of that afternoon, the big one broke out. Multiple cars destroyed, carnage in the middle of the pack, and one of the cars that got caught up in it was Cleetus's close friend and fellow YouTube personality, George Siciliano, who was also racing that day under the name Squirrel McNutt. His car was wrecked in the crash. Cleetus narrowly got through. Now here is what separates this story from just being a lucky survival tale. After getting through the big wreck, Cleetus found himself back in contention for the win. He was on the radio saying things that his team probably had to keep from fully broadcasting. He was emotional. He was locked in. He was racing with everything he had. Partly for himself, and partly because this race meant something personal to him. He had dedicated this run to Greg Biffle. If you know Greg Biffle, you know he is a legendary NASCAR name. Multiple wins, a career built on racetracks like Talladega. Biffle and Cleetus had a genuine friendship, racing at Talladega in Biffle's honor. In a race where Cleetus had very much arrived as a real competitor, carried weight that went beyond the checkered flag. And it almost worked. As the race came down to the final restart, Cleetus was right there. He was in the lead group. He was racing for the win that he had been building toward with every ARCA start he had made. His previous career best in ARCA had been a 9th place finish at Charlotte. Before this day, he had never led a single lap in ARCA competition. Then came the finish. In the final run to the checkered flag, Cleetus and Gus Dean got together. They started making contact while fighting side by side for the lead, doors slamming, tires squealing, two cars trying to occupy the same space. And while they were locked in that battle, Andy Jankowiak came from the outside. He found the opening that the two drivers fighting each other had created, and he drove straight through it to the win. Jankowiak, by the way, had just won his first career ARCA race in his 48th career start. He was so shocked that afterward he admitted he thought there was still one more lap to go. His radio had been staticky, and he genuinely did not know the race was over until he crossed the line. Cleetus McFarland finished second. And now, remember that one-liner we mentioned at the very beginning of this story. This is where it comes back. After everything that happened on that track. After starting last. After leading laps for the first time in his career. After surviving the big one. After coming within a door slam of his first ARCA win. After the emotion of racing for Greg Biffle. After all of it, Cleetus got in front of the Fox camera and delivered this line without missing a beat. Honestly, it's probably the most fun I've ever had with clothes on. It was freaking insane. Talladega! The Fox crew lost it. The fans lost it. And anyone watching that broadcast immediately understood exactly who this guy is and why people follow him. That one line tells you everything about Cleetus McFarland. He did not go into a rehearsed speech about the team's hard work and thanking sponsors. He did not give the standard post-race interview that sounds the same every single weekend. He said exactly what he felt in the most Cleetus McFarland way possible, and it landed perfectly. But here is what that moment actually proved beyond the laugh it got. Cleetus McFarland showed up at Talladega, the track where NASCAR said he was not ready for the big race, and ran a performance that is now being called one of the biggest crossover stories in recent ARCA history. He started 20th. He led laps. He nearly won. He ran smart enough to survive a massive wreck that took out multiple cars, including his friend's car. And he finished second in the best result of his ARCA career. And NASCAR said he was not ready for the main event. So, now the question that the entire sport is sitting with is simple. Does this performance change NASCAR's decision about letting Cleetus race at superspeedways in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series? Because if a driver can start last, lead laps at Talladega, survive the big one, and nearly win the race outright, the argument for keeping him out of the bigger race gets a lot harder to make. Cleetus McFarland went to Talladega to prove something. He almost won. He made the whole country laugh. And now NASCAR has a decision to make.